Hello everyone and welcome back to another video. Today I am going to be reacting and sharing my thoughts on MatPats' film theory for the show Stranger Things. There are 4 seasons in it currently, the fourth one coming out a little over a month ago. It's on Netflix, by the way. Anyone can go on the Netflix website, make an account, or just log into your account and watch it. You do have to pay um, uh, a certain amount of money a month. But anyway, enough of that. Let's get into watching the video. And this is his season 5 predictions, as you can see from up here.
So I originally wanted to do an episode going through Stranger Things and calculating what level all the characters would be if they were a party in Dungeons and Dragons. Considering all the monsters they've beaten, all the adventures they've gone on, all the Soviets they've outsmarted, they've gotta be getting up there in the levels, right? Like level 15 at least. So I busted out some old rule books for the ancient 1st edition advanced D&D that was around back when the show takes place and did some calculations. And then I learned that basically no one has gotten anywhere. Apparently leveling up in classic D&D was just really heckin' hard. The only character that's done enough to level up throughout the entire show is Hopper. Turns out that beating up all those guards and Soviets, killing a horde of Demogorgons, and looting a whole freaking snowmobile added up just over 1 level's worth of XP. Just 1 level! But don't worry, Hop, Vecna's only considered to be a demigod of greater power. I have no doubt that a level 2 fighter can beat him. Hello, Internet! Welcome to Film Theory, the show that's always running up that hill called the YouTube algorithm. Today we're journeying into the Upside Down with all our favorite kids from Hawkins, Indiana. Though, can we even call them kids at this point? With how much time there is between seasons of this thing, Dustin over here is looking like he's ready to put a down payment on his first mortgage. Honestly, though, it's not just the kids who've grown up either. It's wild to think just how much the Stranger Things franchise has grown since it first premiered. I mean, this thing started as a mid-budget homage to classic 80s movies, and now it's got a budget that's larger than not only those cinematic classics, but also modern-day blockbusters. Seriously, Netflix spent $270 million on Stranger Things Season 4.
Holy
Compare that to
cow.
the biggest movie of 2022 so far, Top Gun Maverick. That thing had a budget of only $170 million. How do you even afford that? Well,
Only
don't worry,
$170
Netflix
million.
has got themselves a plan. You know, they could have taken my advice from a previous episode, but nah, they've got a better idea. They're betting the farm on a Stranger Things pop-up shop in Paris.
So what sort of things do you think you can buy in Stranger Things the store?
Wow, look at all that specialty merch, like trucker hats. Gotta be honest with you, Netflix, something tells me that you might need to do a bit more than sell a few t-shirts to break even on this one. Now, in case you've somehow missed one of the biggest streaming shows ever, Stranger Things is the story of 4 nerdy friends. 5 nerdy friends. 6, 7, 8? Netflix, slow down. It's no wonder the budget for this thing is so huge. You're adding like 3 new ongoing main characters every season. Anyway, every season this small football team's worth of nerds are tasked with trying to save themselves, their hometown, and the world from the Upside Down, a dark mirror dimension full of spooky, scary monsters. But despite having more than enough warm bodies to throw at the nearest threat, every season ultimately boils down to one character, 11, a young girl with incredible psychic powers and terrible arts and crafts powers.
And for my visual aid, I made a diorama of our cabin.
Oh yeah, and sometimes some of them go to Russia and stay there for way too long. Seriously, you had an out written into the story. Why did you double down, guys? Sorry, just had to get that off my chest. If you know, you know. Anyway, the newest season introduced us to basically the final boss of the whole show, the bone-breakingly powerful Vecna, another powerful psychic coming from the same training program as 11. This guy is scary, and he immediately makes a huge first impression. But even more incredible is the fact that he's been teased in the series since episode 1 of Season 1. Notice the key turning right here? Yeah, the big bad of Season 1 is the Demogorgon, and that's not a psychic monster. That right there has to be Vecna's doing. Also, you got this clock noise that's heard before Will enters the Upside Down.
Okay, sorry I'm pausing the video here. I know everybody hates it when YouTubers do that. But all I'm going to say is the Demogorgon had the ability to travel between dimensions. Like, by dimensions I mean from the normal world and the Upside Down. Making these kind of portals and, oh god, what's it called in the show? Gates, from different areas. For example, in Season 1, the area in the tree where where Nancy and Jonathan are in the forest. Sorry, that's a spoiler. Spoilers for the show, by the way. So it didn't necessarily have to be Vecna doing this. It could have always been the Demogorgon. The Demogorgon, again, was able to create gates, so what's stopping it from opening a latch on top of your door? Like, I mean, there is a fine line between opening a latch on your door with a mind, and then making a portal to another dimension. Like, there's a fine line between it. I think there's a couple lines, actually. Anyway, sorry.
How cool is that? In the opening minutes, we're teased about this guy who only appears a couple seasons later. TLDR here, the show's been building to his reveal for a long time. They even show that Vecna's been the one actively controlling all the other monsters from the previous seasons. In short, this dude is a big deal, which means that all the other monsters...
Sorry, I'm just gonna put this out there, but looking at this now, after watching Season 4, these look like outlines of wings, and this looks like the squid bottom of the Demobats. The Demobats are one of the new monsters in the latest season, Season 4, and it looks like they've also been hinting that. I don't think Matt mentions that in the video.
Monsters from the previous seasons. In short, this dude is a big deal, which means that no matter how long you stand there with your arm outstretched, 11, it ain't gonna work. And we see this in the season's final episode. Despite being lit on fire, shot point blank with a shotgun, having parts of his hive mind severed, and falling several stories out a window, Vecna escapes. And he'll be back for the final season. Will makes that abundantly clear.
I can feel him, and he's hurt. He's hurting. But he's still alive.
So what else can our lovable team of geeks do? How do you kill this seemingly unkillable foe? Well, I think that we actually have a blueprint for exactly how to beat this guy thanks to a little game called Dungeons and Dragons. This tabletop RPG is obviously core to the lore of Stranger Things.
Oh, Jesus, we're so screwed if it's the Demogorgon.
It's not the Demogorgon. An army of troglodytes charged into the chamber.
Troglodytes?
Told you.
But I'm not sure many people realize just how influential it's been. So today we're gonna look at the pieces Stranger Things has set up throughout the series and examine the lore of the franchise through the lens of D&D to tell you exactly what Vecna's plan is and how they're ultimately gonna stop him. Spoiler alert, our lovable gang from Hawkins, Indiana are gonna have to make a couple horrible sacrifices to do it. Millie Bobby Brown, the actress playing 11, she recently said in an interview that she wished that the show had more deaths. Well, let me be the first to tell her she's gonna get them this next season. In fact, I have a strong suspicion as to who's gonna die next season, and their deaths won't be completely pointless like Eddie's. Side note, loved Eddie as a character.
Eddie was the best character in Season 4. Just putting that out there. Also, here's my suspicions on who's gonna die. 11, like 60% sure she's gonna die. Probably Mike and the rest of her family, because Nancy said that in Season 4 that Vecna showed her a kind of vision into the future of her family, her mother, her brother Mike, and her younger sister Holly, all, well, dead. And thinking about it now, in season 4, Max goes blind, I think, because Vecna kills her, and then 11 revives her by pulling a JoJo's Bizarre Adventure and, reaching into her heart and just start pumping blood again, as Jotaro did when he was fighting Dio. Sorry, that's a reference. Watch JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, by the way. It's a really good anime. Really liked it. And I instantly forgot what I was going to say about the show, so I'm just going to play it again.
It's cool and all that you got to do that epic guitar solo, but seriously, these guys are smarter than that. They thought through their plan. They could have just set up a tape to play on top of a speaker system. And don't...
Okay, just remembered what I was going to say. Sorry about that. My predictions on who's going to die. 11, 60% sure. I have a feeling Susie, Dustin's girlfriend in Utah, is probably going to have a lot more to do with the show, since she was introduced in Season 3. There was like a whole episode and a bit on her in Season 4. I have a feeling she's 100% gonna have something to do with the whole Hawkins thing. And whatever. So Nancy's probably gonna die, just because, she was, like, her whole thing was, like, when she saw the visions, she probably is also dead. Mike probably will. maybe Joyce, because I'm just thinking about this. The whole show has been about Joyce and everybody else trying to save Will, trying to find him, or at least that's what season 1 was about. Then they were trying to save him in season 2, and then they were trying to save like literally everyone in season 3 and season 4. Of course, in season 4, Eddie was the casualty, and Hopper was the supposed casualty in season 3. Anyway, so if Will dies, then probably Jonathan and Joyce are gonna die. Because Joyce is probably gonna go try and save her son, Jonathan to save his younger brother, as he was really he had a really strong impact on Will's life since Jonathan and Will's parents got divorced, as we found out in season 1. And if Joyce dies, then Hopper's probably also gonna die for real this time, since this is the final season. And I'm only saying Hopper dies because Hopper and Joyce are now in a relationship. Hopper is probably gonna see Joyce die, and there's gonna be this whole thing on Hopper trying to either save Joyce before she dies, and also saving Will and everybody else. And then inevitably, probably Hopper dying. If Hopper does die, then Joyce will probably stay alive so she can grieve, because I already know they're going to do that to make a reference to season 1, which, by the way, that'd be genius if they did that, because I don't think any of the show has been, or most of the show has been written yet, because I think they just started, the Duffer Brothers, the creators of the show, by the way. And yeah, I think that's everyone I think is going to die. And also Steve, because they kind of hinted towards his death in season 4 when he was attacked by the Demobats, but then everybody came and saved him. So, and they also hinted towards Nancy's death and Robin's death in season 4 when they were all being hung on the wall by the vines, these things. So yeah, I think a good portion of the show is going to die, and I think they're finally going to kill off Max, just because, I mean, she was already hinted to dying, and then she also technically died and then was revived. So yeah, I think that's all my predictions, which is pretty much all the main characters except Dustin, Susie, and Lucas, and their families. And also a lot of people all around the world are going to die because of the army that was hinted in season 4 from Nancy's visions. Anyway, sorry, back to the video. Sorry about that.
Don't even get me started on the whole I need to buy them time thing. No, just no. Hashtag justice for Eddie. He was too cool and too smart. He deserved a better death. Okay, rant over. So, can I predict the ending of...
And now there's an ad. That's amazing.
Build custom industrial machines.
No.
A show whose ending hasn't even been written yet and likely won't air for at least another year and a half when Mike is old enough to join AARP. Hop on your trailers, friends. Today we're shredding some lore. So first off, just to be clear, Stranger Things has made no effort to hide how much of its mythology is inspired by Dungeons and Dragons. I mean, all of its main monsters are straight up named after famous D&D enemies. But names aren't the only thing that they borrow. The basic concepts behind the D&D monsters are also incorporated into the Stranger Things iterations. Think about it like that meme where you copy your friend's homework but you change it just enough so you won't get into trouble. If you want an example, just take a look at season 3's Mind Flayer. In the game, Mind Flayers are illithid, tentacle-faced creatures from a different plane of existence that operate a hive mind, telepathically controlling intelligent creatures as minions and reproducing via creepy slugs that infect the brains of host bodies. Now, take a look at Stranger Things. Their Mind Flayer is a hive mind, check, from a different plane of existence, check, that often takes the form of creatures with tentacles, check. It has the ability to control the minds of people, like we see with Billy, check, and the Demogorgons controlled by the Mind Flayer will reproduce with gross slugs that live in hosts like Will. Check again. And this pattern holds true for Vecna too. If you play D&D, you knew that things were about to get serious the second they revealed the dude's name. In the game, Vecna is a lich, basically
Is this Thanos?
an absurdly powerful undead wizard. He also holds the title Master of the Spider Throne. Cool name, terrible building material for a throne. He's also the...
Okay, on that whole spider thing, for those of you who've watched season 4 and all the other seasons, you already know that Vecna is Henry CREEL, a boy that was an outsider and with special psychic abilities that he can move stuff with his mind pretty much. He's just fancy dude who can move stuff with his mind when he sticks his arm out or just looks at stuff. Like 11. So already the what's it called? What's he called? What the
Spider throne.
Master of the Spider Throne. In season 3, they called the monster that was made out of flesh and bones and whatever, that was the Spider Monster, already hinting towards Henry Creel's obsession with spiders, and also the Mind Flayer. That whole thing, it's also hinting towards the spider because it looks like a spider, but then again, from that image from before, it also looked like a Demobat. So it's hinting towards two things from season 4, and then the clock sound from season 1. So there's already a lot of hints to this guy right here. And I think that's all the hints that I can think of right now.
Throne. Cool name, terrible building material for a throne. He's also the closest thing to a Thanos that you're gonna get in D&D. In one of the most famous Vecna stories, the adventure starts with him killing the Council of 8, a collection of the strongest sorcerers in the entire world. Talk about making your presence known.
Okay, another thing. I think 8 people are gonna die because they're okay. They're using Vecna here, so I mean they're probably gonna kill 8 people from the next season, the last season, just to really tie it into Dungeons and Dragons, make everything seem close to the same and follow the same storyline.
For a while, the only parts of Vecna that remained in the world of D&D were his eye and his hand, and those alone were considered legendary artifacts with the ability to grant incredibly evil powers. The long and short of all of this is, while we can't look at D&D lore as a hard blueprint for exactly what's going to happen, we can use it as a sort of cheat sheet to get an idea of where the show might be headed to next. So, how does all of that map onto Stranger Things? Well, as I just mentioned, Vecna is the true ruler of the Upside Down, but he's not native to it. He's actually a human boy named Henry Creel, the very first child to become part of the experiments where 11 honed her powers. This, in turn, gave him the moniker 1.
It's killing Vecna.
/ Henry.
/ what?
He might not be a powerful wizard, but he is a powerful psychic. He may not sit atop a spider throne, but he does like spiders. And just like D&D's Vecna killed the other mages in the Council of 8, 1 in Stranger Things killed all the other powerful kids in the psychic experiments.
That's also true.
In fact, 11 gets so angry in this moment that she basically tears him apart. It's only once he's in the Upside Down that he's able to regain his strength. In short, Henry is quite literally killed and then reborn. In a lot of ways, you could say that he's undead, just like Vecna the Lich. And remember the whole eye and hand being powerful artifact thing from D&D? Well, Vecna in the show is shown with one enlarged hand and is just oozing with eye imagery. The parallels here are...
Okay, on this subject, I'm not 100% sure because it's been a hot second since I've played D&D, which is Dungeons and Dragons, by the way. But I'm pretty sure, if we're going by the D&D books, then Vecna lost his left hand and left eye. So already this isn't really following it, because that's his left hand, and his left hand is the creepy one. But if we're talking about his human form losing it, then yeah, this is 100% correct. So I think that's what they're going with, the Duffer Brothers. They're losing his left hand to the Mind Flayer and corrupting it, kind of. And also, I've noticed something. His left eye, it looks like a blind eye, pretty much, but a blind eye that he can still see out of. So he's like Will in that way, so to where he can see into both the normal world and the Upside Down. One eye's for the Upside Down, which would probably be his left eye, and one eye is for the right side up, or the normal world, or whatever you want to call it. And yeah, there's a lot of eye stuff, like just the original gate from season 1. That was already a hint to eyes and whatever. So that's also a huge hint. And also there's a thing right here on his hand, and I don't believe it's a visual glitch on my computer, but I'm pretty sure also in the show, Vecna had a kind of, it looked like a cyst growing out of his hand, which I also believe because we saw a little over here, right there, in the little box, in the little box above where my cursor is, you can see an eye in the hand, and that could also be a reference to actual D&D.
Very clear. And this is even looking past how Stranger Things' Vecna looks an awful lot like some incarnations of the D&D character. So a lot of that lines up really well, and that
Also just notice one eye, this eye looks darker, this eye looks lighter, but then again it could also be just the lighting, but even without the lighting, this eye was darker in the show, and this eye was lighter.
looks an awful lot like some incarnations of the D&D character. So a lot of that lines up really well, and that naturally got me asking, what else in Vecna's D&D lore can we look at to figure out what the next season is gonna do? Well, most iterations of the character have one major goal: to become a god. Vecna's been trying to do it for basically as long as he's been around, and he's even succeeded in some D&D storylines. That's also gonna be Vecna's goal in Stranger Things, as one explains in Season 4.
Imagine what we could do together. We could reshape the world, remake it however we see fit.
He's likely going to do this by transporting a great deal of the Upside Down out into the real world, if what Nancy sees in her vague vision of the future is to be believed.
He showed me things that haven't happened yet. There were so many monsters, an army, and they were coming into Hawkins.
And this actually lines up with perhaps the most popular iteration of the character, one that predates Stranger Things. I'm talking about Vecna's appearance as the villain from the massively popular D&D livestream Critical Role.
He wasn't really going to offer information anyway.
Who are you?
Standing by the doorway, you see there, arms crossed, casually standing before you, Vecna.
Now, before you bring it up, yes, Critical Role is independent from D&D's publisher, Wizards of the Coast, but because of its popularity, Wizards frequently references the events of Critical Role as part of D&D canon. In short, the stories of Critical Role and their version of Vecna are absolutely parts of the D&D canon that we can look at to chart the future of Stranger Things. And in that story, Vecna bides his time building his power in a realm called the Shadowfell, a dark reflection of the real world often associated with spider gods. Dark reflections of the real world filled with spider-like things, you say? In the end, Vecna teleports his entire army from the Shadowfell out to the real world, attacking a major city before the heroes stop him. So, I expect that Stranger Things is gonna follow that basic outline as well. But the big...
Okay, so obviously his army is going to consist of Demogorgons, Demodogs, Democats, as people like to call the smaller version of Demodogs, and probably also Demobats and the Mind Flayer, most likely. The Mind Flayer is probably going to come out somewhere to the end, the last, let's say, 2 episodes of the season, and he's gonna come out of another gate, and boom, another big bad boy for the gang to defeat. Not only do they have to defeat this guy, they also have to defeat a giant spider, 'cause that's always fun.
Bigger question is obviously not what he's gonna do, but rather what do you do to stop him? Is there anything in the D&D lore that can tell us what our main characters need to do? Thankfully, yes. In fact, the way to stop Vecna is foundational to his lore. You see, one constant across every incarnation of the character is that he's betrayed by his right-hand man, the vampire lord Kos the Bloody-Handed.
Vecna's dead! Killed by cat!
So it was thought, my friend. So it was thought.
See, Vecna made the classic bad guy mistake of trusting another bad guy, elevating
Okay, so if they're gonna follow that timeline, then storyline, then Kos could. No, I read on, I believe it's on Reddit. People are saying that Eddie is Kos, and he's gonna come back and whatever. But no, because Kos would probably be 11, since Henry CREEL did invite 11 to rule the world with him, as you saw earlier in these at 9 minutes in the actual video, which by the way will be linked below. Yeah, so Kos is probably 11 because 11 already betrayed him. So yeah, I think that would probably be the most logical conclusion to this.
Kos and granting him a powerful magic weapon that would eventually come to be known as the Sword of Kos. Of course, Kos eventually uses this sword to cut off Vecna's hand and rip out his eye before banishing him to another realm. In the present day, the Sword of Kos remains one of the only ways to destroy the remaining artifacts of Vecna. So clearly, Stranger Things is gonna have their own iteration of Kos. In fact, many online theorists think that they've already got a handle on who exactly the betrayer is gonna be. So let's quickly talk about that in a mini Morty.
Gonna talk about a popular theory for just a minute. That's why we call it a mini Morty.
Why should you use Mural? When
Oh
you
my
draw on a
God.
whiteboard, no one sees it. With Mural, you can plan together.
No.
A popular theory that's been floating around the old Reddits is that the late great Eddie Munson is gonna return as the show's iteration of
Yeah,
Kos.
I knew it
According to
was
them,
that.
Kos was most well known for using a sword, just like Eddie uses against the Demobats during the final battle.
That was more like a spear. The whole vampire thing, because Kos is technically supposed to be a vampire, I'm pretty sure. The whole vampire thing, the Demobats, bats, vampires, put that together.
Kos was a vampire lord.
Yeah, there we go. But then again, Eddie, it wouldn't make sense if they had Eddie wielding the sword, as MatPats has called it. It's technically a spear, but let's just call it a sword for now. It wouldn't make sense if he was wielding that because he was a guitarist in a band, and he had an axe, which is just a fancy rock name for saying a guitar, electric guitar. So he'd most likely be somebody wielding an axe, and I'm trying to think of a character from D&D that would be wielding an axe. That is, okay, I can't think of anyone right now. But yeah, it'd probably be something along those lines. But not Kos, not Eddie being Kos, but Eddie being someone else who wields an axe.
Creatures often associated with bats, and Eddie was killed by a swarm of demobats. Plus, the choice of Metallica's Master of Puppets as the song that Eddie rocks out to could be foreshadowing that he'll be risen as Kos under Vecna's control. They specifically point to lyrics like, "Master of Puppets, I'm pulling your strings, twisting your mind, and smashing your dreams." And while I think I made it clear earlier just how much I'd love to see Eddie get some well-deserved justice, I just don't think the parallels here make a lot of sense. First off, yeah, Eddie uses a sword, I guess, but there's nothing special about that particular sword. If anything, Eddie's guitar was his much more iconic weapon. You could say that he's much more of a bard character who uses an axe. Secondly, well, yeah, he did die to demobats. Steve also got bit real bad by the bats, so the connection isn't just with Eddie. Finally, the lyrical connection between Master of Puppets and Vecna is really cool, but the showrunners made it clear that Eddie's guitar solo wasn't originally planned. All they knew was that Eddie was just gonna distract the demobats in some way. They didn't know how. The concert angle wasn't pitched until very late in the writing process after the main beats of the story, including Eddie's death, had already been set in stone. Master of Puppets was also chosen after the scene was conceived, partially because the lyrics, which described drug addiction, not only matched up so well with Vecna, but also Eddie's past as a drug dealer. Do I think that Eddie might come back reincarnated or as a vision in some way? Sure, especially considering how popular he was this season. But do I think that he's Kos and will bring down Vecna? No. And the biggest reason for that actually has nothing to do with bats or swords. I think that there's already a far better candidate for Kos, one that's already completed part of the thematic arc for the character within
11.
D&D lore. 11. Yeah,
Yep.
I know. Shocking revelation that the main character might have the best shot at beating the main villain, but who else did you expect? See, 1 was the person that encouraged 11 to embrace her powers, taking her on as his right-hand man in that way. It's his encouragement that ultimately helps her find herself. In our D&D comparison, that parallels the way Vecna uplifted Kos and gave him his sword. 1 even offers Elle a place at his side when he reveals his plan to take over the world. Again, like their D&D counterparts. However, just like Vecna was betrayed by Kos, 11 betrays 1 by using her powers, her sword, to rip open the very first portal into the Upside Down, throwing 1 inside, just like
So her
Kos
sword would be her
banished Vecna.
arm.
So, true to form, it's clear that this is
Or
the
her
direction
mind,
that they're
or
taking
whatever
with
powers
11.
she was
And even if
using.
taking down Vecna is going to be a team effort from the full cast, Elle and her powers are absolutely the sword of Kos that's going to be needed to deliver the final blow. But there's one final piece to our puzzle here. Like I said when we first introduced the D&D bad guy, Vecna's a lich. And the thing about liches is that they're undead. They sacrifice their humanity for immortality, ripping their souls out of their bodies and putting them into magical objects called phylacteries. As long as a lich's phylactery remains intact, they literally cannot die. Think of a phylactery like a Horcrux from Harry Potter. Now, just like other D&D
Okay. So I do think that MatPat is right on that. He 100% has a phylactery, as he was shot point blank with a buckshot shotgun. All shotguns are buckshot. Why did I mention that? I'm not smart right now. Anyway, he was shot point blank with a shotgun. He was set on fire by multiple Molotovs. And he was also thrown out like a three-story house. So it would make sense that he has a phylactery, since Will later in the show, I have hiccups for some reason. Will later in the show also said that being in Hawkins, he can now feel Vecna's presence and see him and feel what he feels. And that Vecna was hurting, which means he's still alive, which obviously means the phylactery, the phylactery is also still alive and standing, so that he can stand too. Now, originally, I was thinking the phylactery could be Steve's baseball bat, as it's an iconic part of the show, but now I'm thinking it has to mean something to Vecna. Like, and by mean something, I mean, like, be important to him, to where he would think that would be a good phylactery for me, or something of that, or along those lines. So I don't think the whole Steve's baseball bat thing fits anymore. I think because Henry CREEL liked spiders, I would think the Mind Flayer would be the closest thing to his phylactery, which means that 11 would have to take down the Mind Flayer in order for Vecna to come out, and which means that Vecna would not go, and which means the Mind Flayer would probably lead the army out from the huge gate that has been made in Hawkins, with an army of Demogorgons, Demodogs, Democats, Demobats, whatever, the whole gang, and then when the Mind Flayer is ultimately taken down, Vecna comes in on his last leg, trying to find a new phylactery or getting a new phylactery or something, so that he can continue to live, just to end 11, so that 11 can no longer interfere with his plans on taking over the world.
Concepts borrowed by Stranger Things. I don't think the show's Vecna literally ripped his soul out of his body and put it into a baseball or whatever. But with Vecna coming back next season despite being lit on fire, shot point blank with a shotgun, and falling several stories out of a window, I think it's safe to say that he may have himself some phylacteries lying around. So if the Hawkins gang want to put an end to...
That's also true. He could have multiple phylacteries. So if he did have multiple phylacteries, I'd say Will would probably be the next choice, because Will is a part of the hive mind. He's connected to the Upside Down and to Vecna and to the Mind Flayer. So, or actually, that's what they said in season 2. They said in season 2 that Will was connected to the Mind Flayer. What if Will is the Mind Flayer's phylactery, and in order to eliminate the Mind Flayer, he'd have to eliminate Will? But then that wouldn't tie into D&D at all. So if Vecna did have multiple phylacteries, it'd probably be Will and the Mind Flayer. If he had only one, it'd be a coin toss between Will and the Mind Flayer, just because of Henry CREEL's obsession with spiders.
Vecna once and for all, they're gonna have to find that phylactery and destroy it. Sadly, D&D lore is very secretive about what exactly their Vecna uses as his phylactery, so we're not gonna be able to find a clean equivalent within Stranger Things, but that doesn't mean that we can't figure it out. In fact, I think what Vecna's phylactery is on the show is kinda obvious. We already know that Vecna's connected to the Mind Flayer's hive mind, and that when he kills people with his powers, they join that hive mind and increase his strength.
They're not gone, 11. They're still with me. Here.
Likewise, when something like a Demogorgon dies, Vecna is weakened. So it would make sense that 11 and the others would need to destroy that hive mind to weaken Vecna so he can be defeated. There's just one problem with that. There's someone else that's tapped into the hive mind, Will Byers. Ever since he was trapped in the Upside Down in season 1, Will has had some sort of a connection to the realm, to the Mind Flayer, and now to Vecna. He begins seeing glimpses of it in the real world. He begins to draw the same spidery shape that Vecna was obsessed with when he was a child. More explicitly, in season 2, Vecna and the Mind Flayer Flare use Will as a vessel, possessing his body and puppeteering him like a marionette. And since then, Will can feel Vecna. He senses when he's in pain or when he's nearby in the Upside Down. And that means that Will is likely a major part of that phylactery that'll need to be destroyed in order to kill Vecna. It also provides an added layer of bookending to know that the series started with a season-long mission to keep Will alive, but will end with a season-long mission that requires the team to kill him. And honestly, this is just a brilliant setup for a beautifully tragic storyline. 11 has been welcomed into the Byers family as one of their own, an adopted daughter. They love 11, and 11 loves them. And now she has to go and kill her own adopted brother. But of course, Will's not going to be alone in this. There's a very real possibility that we're going to lose a lot of our beloved idiots. Remember that vision of the future that Vecna showed Mike's sister Nancy? Well, parts of it have already explicitly come true.
He showed me a dark cloud spreading over Hawkins. Downtown on fire.
But the vision didn't stop there for Nancy.
He showed me my mom, Holly, Mike. They were all...
That's right, if other parts of that foretelling come true, Mike is likely gonna eat it next season as well, which will destroy everyone who loves him. As they made explicitly clear this season, Mike is the leader. He's the heart of the team.
See how you're leading us here? You're guiding the whole party, inspiring us. And see your coat of arms here? It's a heart. That's what holds this whole party together. Heart.
So what better way for Vecna to strike than by ripping out the heart? By killing off the one character that gave 11 the...
Okay, so if we're gonna go off of that then okay, so let's say Vecna kills Mike, or some part of the Upside Down kills Mike. They kill the rest of Nancy's family, and probably Nancy herself as well. 11 losing Mike would probably mean that she'd probably go ballistic and start beating the shit out of everything in sight to try and bring back Mike, or to at least, it'd be her way of grieving, essentially. But, oh god, there has to be another piece to this, because this wouldn't make sense entirely. Because, because if Mike dies, then she'd obviously try to kill the phylacteries, or just go for Vecna, but because Vecna also has his phylacteries, he wouldn't die instantly, so she'd have to kill, so 11 would have to kill the phylacteries, which means she'd probably turn around, instantly kill Will, or something, and then that'd be one phylactery down, or the actual phylactery down, and that probably, so, because Hopper is 11's adopted father, legally, then they'd probably push Hopper and Joyce apart, and the Byers family and the Hopper family apart, because Hopper is actually the last name of the characters. 11 and Jim Hopper. Well, Jane Hopper, sorry. Anyway, I'm going on a rant about something that doesn't really matter right now. The point is, I think that, yeah, so it obviously, bring them apart, bring those two families apart, and would most likely mean that Hopper and Joyce's relationship instantly ended because they wouldn't spend any time together because, well, Hopper's daughter literally killed Joyce's son. The son that she's been trying to save and keep safe for the past 4 seasons, which is, I don't know, like, let's say 6 years, considering all these kids were like, what, 9 or 10 when the show started. In the actual show, they were all like 9 or 10, and now they're all like 16 to 18. So let's say 6 to 8 years. She's been trying to save this kid. She's trying to save her son, and then all that 6 to 8 years down the drain, her adopted daughter instantly comes in, swoops by, snaps Will's neck or something.
The boost that she needed to overcome him. Here's the way that I see it all going down. The team realizes that Will is the final phylactery, the thing that's keeping Vecna alive, and that he has to die by 11's hand, her power, her sword of Kos. Except there's one problem. She can't do it. Will and her are like brother and sister. He's the one person who understands her.
Sorry. It's gonna be okay. It's not that bad. We'll fix it together.
okay?
However, Mike and the rest of the family are killed during the final battle, dealing critical emotional damage to both Will and Eleven. Enraged and devastated.
What if that whole we'll fix it together thing is also part of the storyline and Will actually doesn't die? And, okay, so as we've seen in past seasons, Will has kicked out parts of the Upside Down, the Mind Flayer, from inside of him. In Season 1, he coughed up Dart. In Season 2, he was heated up so much to where the Mind Flayer's dust or whatever that was inside of him, that he was infected with, was kicked out. In Season 3, he was just connected to it with his mind. That could have killed him. It might have, because they shut the gate. But they did shut the gate in Season 3. But another one was open in Russia. However, now I believe that one is closed, so which that means all the gates are closed except the ones that were open in Season 4. So he could die once they close all the gates, which means there's a high possibility that he dies either way. But there's also many scenarios where he could survive and he can try to fix things and whatever. Like with his family and everything, he could try to fix things to try and grieve for Mike, as he will I'm fairly certain Mike is gonna bite the dust in this season. Fairly certain. I give him 10% chance that he will survive season 5. 10%, 90% chance he will die. That's just my personal opinion.
Devastated, Eleven does what she has to do. She turns and kills Will, the boy that everyone on the show's been trying to keep alive since the very first episode. And this is the final act that allows Vecna to finally die. From there, you have to deal with the bittersweet aftermath. On one hand, the buyers are grateful that the world is saved, but at the same time, they can't be around Eleven, the one who took Will away from them. This then puts a strain on the relationship between Joyce and Hopper, and the rest of the crew suddenly has to find their new roles without Mike, their heart, their team leader to guide them. And hey, this sets up some awesome sequel potential. I mean, Netflix has already announced that they are milking this cash cow as far as it'll go with a whole stinking production company called Upside Down Pictures. And a spin-off where an emotionally scarred adult Eleven travels the world getting up to psychic shenanigans in the waning years of the Cold War? Yep, seems like a pretty safe bet to me. Or, you know, I could be completely wrong and they just decide that they're gonna bring back that long-lost sister of hers from that one random episode in Season 2. Nah, I don't think anyone, even
that's probably
desperate.
gonna happen.
But hey, that's just a theory. A film theory. And cut.
Alright. Yeah, I think that's everything I want to mention, and I think that's everything. That is the end of MatPats video. I will link it down below. If you enjoyed, like and subscribe. It really helps me out. And yeah, I don't think I have anything else to say, so have a good day, I guess. Damn, that's a really good theory. Oh my god. Alright, have a good day, everyone.